Sup, guys? A 4-4 day yesterday, so a slight loss. Absolutely should have been a winning day. It was looking like it was going to be 5-3 at the end of it. It looked pretty much sure, pretty much certain that it was going to be a 5-3 night with the Brooklyn Nets having the lead at halftime, holding Minnesota's offense way down. The Brooklyn Nets played really well in that game. They were in the game the whole time. And it got to a point where I kind of just stopped paying attention because Brooklyn was within like 2 points with like 5 or 6 minutes left. And I'm like, all right, Brooklyn's going to cover. Then we look and they basically just completely stalled out. And they were wound up scoring like 8 points in the final 6 minutes of the game or something, and wind up losing by 15. Absolutely ridiculous. That absolutely should have been a cover. Brooklyn had 20 more field goal attempts than Minnesota did in the game, but they only shot 33.7% from the field. They had almost the same number of 3-point attempts, but only hit 6 of them, shooting 17.1% from three. I don't know how any of this even happens. It's completely ridiculous. And then Minnesota had 12 more free throw attempts. Some of those coming near the end of the game, of course, and Minnesota didn't even shoot as well from the free throw line. Brooklyn hit 10 of 11, but still they had 12 fewer free throw attempts. So the free throw discrepancy alone counted for 7 extra points for Minnesota over what Brooklyn had. And Brooklyn out-rebounded them as well. So Brooklyn out-rebounded them, had fewer turnovers, and had 20 more field goal attempts and didn't even cover as an 8.5 point underdog. You don't see that like hardly ever. The field goal percentage, even the predictable field goal percentage, like the 2-point shooting was still just a total outlier. And it all happened in the crucial moments of that game after Brooklyn was in that game pretty much the whole time. Absolutely horrible. At halftime, it was looking really good. And then, like I said, even with 6 minutes left, it was looking really good. So that was BS. I think the Indiana non-cover was absolute BS as well. Indiana, I mean, that game was statistically really close. 1 fewer rebound, 1 more turnover for the Indiana side. They had 4 more field goal attempts. The problems came from the free throw line, where Indiana only shot 56% from the free throw line, which is a total outlier. They got outscored by 12 from the free throw line alone, which was more than the difference in the spread. That was more than the difference in the entire game, because they lost by 9. Outscored by 12 just at the free throw line alone. Indiana absolutely was the right side in this game. They shot almost 51% from the floor and still didn't even cover the game, which is totally insane. It was because of the free throws and because the rebounds are close, the turnovers are close. They didn't really get outplayed in the game, really. They had 4 more field goal attempts, like I said, a better field goal percentage, and then the difference was the free throws, which were a huge discrepancy, and then also the 3-point line. Penn State had 21 more points than Indiana did from beyond the arc. Indiana had no 3-pointers made in the entire game until the final couple minutes of the game, when they hit 2 in the final few minutes of the game. They had 0 threes made in the game prior to that point, which that's another out. The Brooklyn game and the Indiana game, those are just such outliers. You don't see things like that, like hardly ever. Those both should have been covers, and it's just ridiculous that neither one of them even got there. So it's absolute. I should absolutely have had a 5-3 day, if not a 6-2 day. The Tarleton State one, yeah, fuck that. We just won't even talk about that. I don't know how Tarleton State keeps doing what they're doing. And then Cincinnati, that could have been a cover as well against TCU. That game was statistically a lot closer than the final score looked. Cincinnati, none of the stats are really that crazy. TCU outscored them by 6 from the free throw line, outscored them, by 12 from beyond the 3-point arc. So 41% 3-point shooting from TCU. That kind of did it there. And then it was the points off of turnovers was ridiculous, even though Cincinnati only had 5 more turnovers than TCU did, which isn't really that bad. But the points off of turnovers were double digits in favor of TCU. And that was kind of the entire difference in the game, because the amount of field goal attempts was pretty close. TCU took way more threes, but that's not really Cincinnati's game. The rebound game was really close between the two teams. So that game, I don't know, it should have been closer to a cover, at least for Cincinnati, I would say. But that one I'm less frustrated in than the other two. So ridiculous. Moving on to today, I'm going to have 4 plays today. You know what one of them is going to be, man. I'm being a bit selective here. There's a college basketball card that's a decent size, but I'm narrowing it down to one game. And no, I'm not going to go against South Florida this time. That's going to be an interesting game. I'm going to want to watch some of it. South Florida is hosting SMU. That's going to be a really interesting game. I do like SMU in that one. They're up from 2 to 2.5 with 63% of the cash and 50% of the tickets. I just don't think South Florida can keep continuing doing what they've been doing. They did almost lose to UTSA, which is one that I forgot to mention. I was on UTSA the other day with South Florida coming off the monster win over Florida Atlantic, and UTSA was winning that game outright for a lot of it. So really, I think the fact that UTSA only got within the spread by 1 point, that was even misleading by a bit, because I think that UTSA was winning like pretty deep into the game outright. So they had chances to win that game outright. So the fact that they came close to not even covering was really ridiculous. But anyway, I think SMU is just the way better team. As I keep saying, South Florida is so overrated. They finally cracked into the top 100 on KenPom. They're 99th on KenPom now, the 23rd team in lock. So I don't know. You can take that for what it's worth, I guess. But SMU, he's got ranked up at 40, and he has SMU winning this game by 3. So I do like SMU a lot more in that one. I'm kind of hoping they get it done, because I just don't really want to see South Florida be able to host the I don't know how the American Athletic works. If it's maybe it's a neutral site, so it won't even matter. Maybe, yeah, I guess it might be a neutral site. So even if South Florida is the 1 seed, it won't really matter as much, because some of these conferences, the 1 seed hosts the tournament, but that might not be the case with the American. I actually think maybe they play it in Memphis, which is kind of bullshit, because Memphis is down this year and they should not get to play it at home. But I'm going on tangents. I should not be doing that. What else we got here? I don't think there are any other really huge games today, really. The Big Ten has got a lot of games today, but they're all kind of games where, Michigan State's playing Ohio State. Michigan State's a double-digit favorite. Purdue's a double-digit favorite on the road at Michigan. Not really that interesting. Then you got the Big East battle between Marquette and Xavier. Marquette's also a double-digit favorite at home. I don't really have any leans on those games, really. And then the lower tier Big Ten games that are today might be more interesting, just because they're closer, probably. The Maryland-Rutgers game and the Minnesota-Nebraska game, but whatever. You know what game I'm going to be on, man. I'm going to the Big East today, the only play that I'm on. This is a very typical spot for me, and it looks like the market is flipping all over the place. It did just look like it was in agreement with me, and now it looks like it's in disagreement with me again. I don't even care, because I agree with me. I agree with myself on taking St. John's plus the points here, plus 3 or whatever it's going to be. You know how I do this. Creighton is up from a 1.5 point favorite to a 3 point favorite. And you might even be able to get more than 3 here. It looks like they have 68% of the tickets, but 94% of the cash right now. That flipped a little bit, because I did just see them having like 80% of the tickets and 70-something% of the cash. So I was like, oh, the cash discrepancy is in the St. John's direction. And now it looks like it's flipping the opposite way again in the Creighton direction, and the line's moving up on Creighton. I don't even care. I mean, Creighton's obviously going to be the public team, dude. I mean, they're the team that's ranked. We saw what they just did. They just beat UConn. That's like the win of the year. That's a win of the year type of thing for Creighton. They're up to 10th in KenPom's rankings. They're in a huge letdown spot, man. KenPom has them winning by 2, so that line where KenPom has them rated, I think that's fine. Like, it's going to be right in line with what you expect with the number. We're getting a little bit of value with the number, really, because KenPom thinks that this line should be a little bit lower. He's got St. John's at the 44th best team, so we can shit on St. John's because their record isn't very good. But KenPom basically is saying that their record is actually worse than maybe it should be, with St. John's in the top 60, at least in both adjusted offense and defensive efficiency, offensive and defensive efficiency. And he has them at 332nd in luck out of 360 whatever teams, 362 teams. He has them at 333rd in luck. So he has them as one of the least lucky teams in the entire country. So basically saying that the way that they played, the record actually should be better than it is. Creighton is just in the monster letdown spot against UConn. Now they're having to travel out to the East Coast. That was the win of the year, man. Creighton over UConn. Creighton's obviously going to make the tournament. They don't really have much else to prove, and they did already beat St. John's at home, although it was only by 1. So I don't know if there's going to be a little bit of in-season revenge there on the part of St. John's as well. But St. John's is coming off kind of an ugly game, I guess, against Georgetown, where they barely won by 5 at Georgetown. Georgetown really bad. Proved that they're not the worst team in the Big East by beating DePaul yesterday. So yay for Georgetown. But St. John's coming off only a 5-point win over Georgetown. I think maybe they were looking ahead to this game a little bit, but they were also on a 3-game loss streak. So they've lost so many games in a row, or so many of the recent games, I should say. They've lost 8 of their last 10 games, man. So not playing well in conference play, really. And people are going to really not want anything to do with St. John's here because their record is so much worse than Creighton. Creighton's now ranked, 10th in the country or something, which is exactly where Ken Baum has them as well. But I just think St. John's is being very underrated. Now, people are going to see, well, the only teams that St. John's have beat in their last I said they've lost 8 of 10, but they've also lost 5 of their last 7, and the only 2 wins in that span were against DePaul and Georgetown. So it's like I almost said Creighton. Oh, hopefully. No, I don't know. But against the 2 worst teams in the Big East, so they have not done well against any of the competitive teams in the Big East lately. But the Big East is a gauntlet, man. So that being said, I still think that St. John's is going to step it up for this one. This is going to be a big game for them, man. They're hosting Creighton, one of the top teams in the conference. I think the win over Georgetown helped to break that losing momentum. They're on that 3-game loss streak, losing to Marquette, Providence, and Seton Hall. I mean, Marquette's good, obviously, and Providence and Seton Hall are tournament bubble teams, which St. John's kind of is right now. So not only does that Georgetown win, I think, break that losing momentum that they have and give them some momentum coming into this game. So I like that aspect of it, really, even though they have 1 fewer day off than Creighton. I do like that. I think it's going to be a weird spot for Creighton having to come back out east again, even though, of course, being in the Big East, they're kind of used to it at this point. But for St. John's, I think this game matters way more because they don't even know if they're going to be in the tournament at this point. They need a big win of some kind. They almost were able to beat Creighton at Creighton. So is that going to mean that Creighton's going to actually be focused here because St. John's almost beat them at home? I kind of doubt it. How could you be focused after you just beat UConn and absolutely stomped UConn by almost 20 points or whatever it was, where I was on Creighton in that game because I thought it was a bad spot for UConn coming off the real statement win against Marquette. Now it's Creighton who's off the huge statement game and having to go on the road. So I don't like the spot for Creighton at all. And Creighton also has Seton Hall up next after this. And Seton Hall, they beat Seton Hall on the road, but that was a barn burner, 3 overtime games. So they might have an eye looking ahead to Seton Hall, too. They got Seton Hall, Marquette, and Villanova up next. So you could argue that this is the game they're going to pay the least attention to out of the games left, even though Ken Pom has St. John's a little bit ahead of Seton Hall. So all that being said, it comes down to this simply being a monster letdown spot for Creighton. I'm going to be on St. John's +3 or whatever the best number is that we can get. It might even keep creeping up a little bit further. But hey, just give me the points with St. John's, man. This is a letdown spot. We'll take St. John's. Moving over to the NBA. I'm going to be on. I said I was going to do this, and I'm going to, I think, stick to it here. And I'm going to take the Philadelphia 76ers +4.5, although it looks like this line is down from 6 on the Milwaukee Bucks. So maybe losing a little bit of value. But the Bucks have 91% of the tickets and only 82% of the cash. They're going to be the public team because everybody's seen how bad the 76ers have looked without Joel Embiid. And we don't even know when he's coming back, really. I think he's supposed to be coming back in March, maybe, but I don't even know if that's going to happen. But the 76ers, they've been without him for so long, man. They're used to playing without him. And even though the 76ers are coming off a decent game, a decent win over the Cavs, yeah, that's a pretty good win. But I think they're still going to be focused. This is an ABC game, man. This is a national TV game that Philly gets to host against the Milwaukee Bucks. So even though they did just come off a game against the Cavs, which is a pretty big game as well, and they do have the Celtics up next, which is also going to be a big game. They're not going to overlook the Milwaukee Bucks on a national TV game in the afternoon coming into their house. I highly doubt that. So I think Philadelphia is going to show up for this one. They are playing a third game in 4 days, but they're staying at home for all of them. So even though the Bucks have played one fewer game in that span, so you could argue the Bucks are in a little bit better rest spot, and you could argue that Philadelphia is coming off a big win of their own. Yes, but I don't see Philadelphia being unfocused here, and I think they're going to continue to be stepping it up here. I don't think that their win over the Cavs is going to set up as much of a letdown spot as what the Bucks are coming off of, which is a game I was on. The Bucks, they had been playing pretty poorly in the Doc Rivers era, and I said I expected them to turn around. Well, I expected them to make adjustments during the All-Star break, and they came out of the All-Star break and played a really, really great game at Minnesota. And now once you've done that, that game, the final score isn't even indicative of what happened in that game, really, because the Bucks had a monster lead throughout a lot of the second half. They were winning that game by double digits for a lot of it, almost leading by 20 at some points in the game, by 16, 17 for a lot of it. That was a great game for the Milwaukee Bucks. But they did also get out-rebounded in that game. And statistically, the game was pretty close. Bucks came out of there with a win. That's a huge win on the road at Minnesota. Now they have to play a second straight road game, and they have to change time zones again and go to the East Coast to face Philadelphia in kind of an early time spot here. I think it's going to be a little bit weird for them to do that. So I do like the Philadelphia side here. I think the Bucks are in the bigger of the letdown spots here, even though they don't really have anything upcoming. I just expect the 76ers are going to show up in this one, and the Bucks are the public team because of recency bias. People just see, well, the Bucks just beat Minnesota, man. They're going to get a lot more credit for beating Minnesota than Philly will get for beating the Cavs at home, I would say. Especially, we also saw the 76ers lose really badly to the Knicks in the game before that, but it was a nice bounce back for the 76ers. So if anything, even though that's a big win, I think it could be like a confidence boost for the 76ers to beat the Cavs and carry that into this game. So I like that better. I think the Bucks are in a letdown spot. I like the spot for the 76ers. So I'm on the 76ers. And then the other game I'm going to be on here is going to be going against, somehow we have what looks to be a square public underdog here in the San Antonio Spurs with 86% of the tickets and only 81% of the cash on them. Who would think that the Spurs would be a public underdog or square underdog? But I think that maybe they are in this case because the Utah Jazz have been so ugly. Jazz are up from 6 to 6.5. I don't know if you can still get the 6. You can lay 6.5. It's going through the 6.5 with juice, so I would not want to let it get to 7 at the very least. I like the Utah side here. I think San Antonio is in the worst spot. They're in the middle of a road trip, and even though they haven't won, they have won one game, they have not. Never mind. They have not won since coming out of the All-Star break, They're 0-2, but they played 2 tough games coming out of the All-Star break. They played Sacramento really close on the road. Shot really well in that game, actually. San Antonio did. Played a real tough game at Sacramento, and then they played another pretty tough game at the Lakers. Even though the Lakers were winning the entire game, San Antonio didn't quite go away in that game. Even when they were losing pretty big closer to the end of the game, they got some points in garbage time, cut it back. But I do think that game is worse for San Antonio than it looks. They wound up cutting it back to 5 at the end, so it looks pretty competitive. And yeah, they put in a big effort and didn't go away in that game. But if you look at the statistics, LA shot 52% from the floor against them. It wasn't a great performance for San Antonio, really. It was, it was a bit close, I guess, statistically otherwise, besides the field goal percentage, which maybe you might say that was a little bit of an outlier. I don't know. But either way, I think those games are bigger than this Utah game for San Antonio. They're coming off some big games. It's a tough stretch for them. They have to go to Minnesota after this. And this is a third straight road game, and it's a third road game in 4 days. And it's going to be going into elevation and putting in pretty big effort in those previous 2 games. I'm not sure that this is a great spot for San Antonio. I think it's not a good rest spot for San Antonio. Not a good travel spot. Having to go into elevation. They put in some decent effort in those. Utah, on the other hand, has 2 days off. They've only played 1 game since the All-Star break. And what do they do in that game? They lost at home to the Charlotte Hornets, which is kind of inexcusable. Although the Hornets had won like a few games going into the All-Star break, so they had actually started turning it on and playing better basketball. So maybe that loss isn't quite as bad as it looks with Charlotte playing better recently, but that's still an embarrassing loss, man. You lose at home as a pretty big favorite to a Charlotte team that has one of the worst records in basketball. Utah's not going to want to let that stand, man. And they have 2 days off and they're not traveling. So they're in the much, much better rest spot and travel spot where they don't have to travel. And I think they're going to be in a bounce back spot and embarrassed mode. And I think those 2 days off are going to help them prepare something, help them focus. Like, it's not every game that you see a team is that you think a team is going to be totally focused on a San Antonio team coming into their house, but I think in this case that will be the case for Utah. I mean, they haven't won since well before the All-Star break. They've lost 5 games in a row. I think they're going to take these 2 days off to re-prepare, refocus something. I mean, all those other games that they lost were to good teams, except for the Charlotte one. So they lost to Phoenix, Golden State twice, and the Lakers. So I don't know if you can really blame them for those losses necessarily. The Charlotte one, I think, is where it kind of meets a head here. That's such an ugly loss. I think they're going to be refocused here. I think what you're going to have is a Utah team who's the better team at home, and they're actually going to show up for this one and be focused. So that's a spot where you want to be on the home favorite, and San Antonio in the much more questionable and worse rest and travel spot here. And this actually being a down spot for San Antonio, as bad as their record is, and as much as they're going to want to focus on every game. I think they were focused on those last 2 games, and they have a bigger game up next. So I don't know how focused they're really going to be on this one. So I like Utah. I think Utah is going to show up focus here. Jazz -6.5 or whatever. And then moving to the NHL, a little bit of a smaller card today. I'm going to have one play in the NHL where it looks like the market is agreeing with me, but it looks like the number's gone down. This is going to be on the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't know why I keep playing on the Pittsburgh Penguins, but I think the spot dictates it, even though you have to lay a little bit of a price here. 55% of the tickets are over on the other side on Philadelphia. Pittsburgh's got 64% of the cash, but it does look like the line's moved down from -165 to -156 on the Pittsburgh money line. So I don't know about that, but it does look like they have the cash discrepancy on them, where Philadelphia is getting more of the public tickets, because I do think the public, their reaction to this is going to be, they're going to look at their records and say, well, Philadelphia has the better record. They're the better team here, right? I'm not sure that they're the better team, although the game is lined like Pittsburgh is the slightly better team. But I think it's also factoring in like the rest spot and all of that to some extent, but I don't even know if it's being factored in enough. I just don't really see Philadelphia being able to pull it off in this game after what they did yesterday. So they're on a back-to-back. But like I said, I think people are going to see Philadelphia at a decent size underdog price and think that there's going to be value in Philadelphia, the team that has the better record here. They're going to think, yeah, let's take Philadelphia getting plus money here, right? It's easy. Philadelphia just played a real tough game against the New York Rangers yesterday, so they have no time off after that. They played a tough game. They outshot the Rangers 40-24. It was a fairly physical game in hits, with the Rangers beating them up a bit physically, 27 hits. Philadelphia had the face-off percentage heavily in their favor, too, 63.3%. And they wound up losing the game on a goal in the third period. It was 1-1 pretty late in the game. They lost still with like 14 minutes left, 13 minutes left in the game. But even so, losing on a goal like that in a tough battle against the Rangers like that, Philadelphia really stepped it up for that game against the Rangers. And now they're on a back-to-back. I don't like the spot for Philadelphia. And they do have Tampa up next, who does have a better record than the Pittsburgh Penguins do as well. So I don't know if Philadelphia is going to have an eye looking ahead to that. This is a Pennsylvania rivalry game, so I don't know if they're going to completely overlook Pittsburgh. But having no time off, I just don't think that that's a good spot for Philadelphia after putting in a max effort yesterday against the Rangers. That was a big game for them. Whereas for Pittsburgh, they actually have 2 days off. They did win one game before going into this extended break for them, but I don't know if that's really going to matter. I don't think it's going to disrupt like their momentum really or anything like that. They beat the Montreal Canadiens. I don't think anybody's going to really care about that. That's a win that doesn't really matter that much. I think Pittsburgh's going to be focused here on Philadelphia, and they have the extra rest. So they have the extra time to prepare for this. So I expect them to be focused for this. 2 extra days of rest. It's being factored into the line a little bit, but I still think the market looks like it's indicating on the Pittsburgh side, and I still think that the price is decent enough to lay on the Pittsburgh side at minus 156 or whatever it is. So I would say, yeah, do it on the Pittsburgh side there, and that's going to do it for me, man. So hopefully get back on the winning side. We had 4 winning days in a row, and then yesterday, as I said, it should have been a win. If one of those 2 games hit, it would have been a winning day yesterday, and at least one of them, if not both of them, should have hit. So 4 plays today. Let's get back on the winning side again after a small loss yesterday. We've had a good week, really, in the past week, so those plays, once again, St. John's +3 in basketball, or if you can get higher than 3, if it gets up even higher, yeah. NBA, Philadelphia 76ers +4.5, Utah Jazz -6.5, and then and the Utah one might keep moving up. So that one I think you have to get on faster, I would say. The other ones I'm not quite sure. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins -156 in NHL. That's going to do it, man. Let's have a good Sunday. Peace.